doğru kaçıyorlar. Kuzeye doğru göç edenler Türkiye'ye geldiler. Türkiye'ye gelen bu Suriyelilere Türkiye devleti siz hangi dindensiniz, hangi mezheptensiniz, hangi ırktansınız diye sormadan kucağını açtı, çorbasını, ekmeğini bölüştü diyor o Suriyeli akademisyen Doktor Hasan Hattaf veya Hattar ismi. Ama dedi bizim ülkemizde savaştan dolayı bir de güneye kaçanlar oldu. Güneye doğru göçenler oldu. Güneye doğru göç edenlere Körfez ülkelerindeki bir kısım yardım kuruluşları mezhep sordular dedi. Hangi mezheptensin? İşte biz Suriyeli Ehl-i Sünnet'in Eş'ari bölümündeniz. Deyince dediler olmaz. Şu mezhebini değiştirirsen, bizim gibi Selefi olursan size çorba çok, yiyecek çok, giyecek çok. Ama önce mezhebinizi değiştirin dediler. Ama Türkiye dinini, mezhebini, ırkını sormadan kucak açtı ve şunu dedi o Şamlı akademisyen, 1000 yıl önce EBU'L-HASAN Harakani Hazretlerinin söylediği bizim dergahımıza gelenlere hiçbir şey sormadan çorbasını, ekmeğini verin sözünü, bu felsefeyi, bu kültürü bugün dünyada Türkiye yaşatıyor. Ama maalesef bazı Körfez ülkeleri diye itiraf etti. Bir insan garipse, fakirse, yaşlıysa el uzatmak lazım. Bizim Bandırmalı tatlıcı Ali amcamız öyle derdi. Bir insan yaşlıysa, gayrimüslim bile olsa hürmet eden mecur olur.
If a person is in need and if he is old, even if he is non-Muslim, respecting that person is necessary. If you do that, you will be blessed. Because he said, an old person cannot really be conscious in what they do. They lose their will and control. So they need to be helped no matter who they are. So as we can see from the sweet shop owner, we need to help them no matter what. There is also another word in Tezkiretül Evliya. EBU'L-HASAN Harakani spoke to the Prophet in his dream, and what if I say, I disclose your sins and your bad behaviors with the public, what will happen to you? And then Harakani says to God, you are Setta, you are the coverer, you are the hider. If you want, you can hide my sins, or if you want, you can disclose it. What if I tell your secrets to the public, to the people? Then what will happen? If I tell them how compassionate, how forgiving you are, and how you want to give heaven to everyone, then they will get so lax that nobody will worship you. So thinking after a while, God said to Harakani, then let's call this off. I stay silent and you stay silent. We have 3 speakers today. Our first speaker is from Erzincan Faculty of Divinity, Halil BALTACI, and he studies Necdet TOSUN's work and Hamadani. He has really nice work. Now we will listen to his speech. It is about his topic is about expression of Sufi experience, the Shath issue in Sufism, and the Shathiyat of al-Kharaqani. Actually, this is one of the most challenging issues of tasawwuf, because the Zahiri ulema criticizes the mutasawwuf on this issue a lot. I was actually a bit confused. I was I was a bit hesitant about this because there were lots of debates about transferring this to other people or not, and what should be done. These Shathiyas, how did they conceive this? How did they perceive this? And how did they reflect this? So when we look at the works of Tasawwuf, like Tezkiretül Evliya and Esrar Evliya, tells us about this. I will try to be true to my time. Actually, Shathiyas are a result of the Khorasani school. So the notions of Vejd and Jezbe and being a Melami and intoxicated, ecstatic are important notions. These people are the lovers of Vejd and Jezbe, and they are very ecstatic. It goes all the way down to Bistami, Shibli, and Nuri, Tusteri, and Baghdadi, and all the way to Harakani. There are many Sufis who have spoke in the Shathiyya school. Hussein bin Mansur, known as Hallaju Mansur commonly, were also among those who practiced Shathiyya. So Shath or Shathiyya, what does it mean? The dictionary tells us it means to stay away, to make the words longer, to go beyond, to exceed your limits, to move, to shake, to overflow. And there is a definition of it: unusual, unexpected phrases and expressions in defining and telling the Vejd state. And there should be a movement in it, because Syed says Shath is a word that is derived from movement, and Shath only starts moving when the Vejd goes really strong in the Vejd Ehli. And this tells us the Shathi approach and the verbal expressions are both included in Shathiyas. Junaid Baghdadi is known as a very controlled person who is really cautious and very careful. He is known with his alertness. He is not really too much ecstatic, but he says the Shath and the words of Shathiyya are the words only the sayer knows, that are specific and unique to the sayer in respect to its depth and its meaning. But Junaid says these words of Bayezid should be defended, but still these are a reason for a bidayat, so calls him a convert nonetheless. And then Ghazali's opinions come to view. He says the Arifan rising up to the skies of truth see that no other truth exists other than God, and with that pleasure, joy, and its intoxication, the kesret, the multiplicity, the abundance, the multiplicity gets out of the way and the unity takes place. And Ghazali also calls Shathiyat difficult to understand and useful for non-covered words. But he says the human nature is prone to dealing with that sort of thing, and it says that it is really dangerous for especially the average person, the layman. And he says that mental balance or disorientation creates the Shathiyas, it blurs the heart, and he puzzles the mind, and he leads the listeners to directions not meant to happen. There is actually a contradictory attitude in Ghazali's approach, because he's trying to come up with a balance of Sharia and Hakika, and he says that one side is about the truth aspect of the things, and the other side was to respond to the criticism. We know that God becomes the walking feet, seeing eye, and the hearing ear of a servant when that servant loves God. And this is actually coming from that level. The people who do the Shathiyas come from a higher level, an elevated level, and they should not be condemned. Sheikh Chattah Ruzbihan Bakli Shirazi is actually the master of the Shathiyas, and he tries to defend and support the Sufis. His Shathiya approach is similar to Sarraj and Ghazali, is a follower of their school or approach. Maybe one of the most important qualities of him is that he doesn't limit Shathiyya with only the words of the writers, but he sees them as mutashabih, like the ayat of Quran. And one other thing, he doesn't limit it with just words only, but also actions, behaviors, attitudes can also have the quality of Shathiyya. Muhyiddin Ibn al-Arabi has negative opinions about Shathiyya because he thinks that the state of wajd is about the human nature and its effect on the heart. He says practicing shatahat is actually a slip of the truth, and he says the muhakkik will never be sadr, and he says the Shathiyas are derived from the vanity of the sayers, and they are not seen in the muhakkik Sufis but only the mubtadis. And Necdet Daye also commented about Shathiyas, and especially EBU'L-HASAN Harakani's famous Shathiyya, a Sufi غayru makhlukin, the Sufi is not created, is commented specifically with a separate risale. Daye underlines the relationship of Shathiyas with tajalli, and he says that these are a result of Allah's Zat and Sifat reflections, tajallis, and Mevlana has also explained, commented on Shathiyas and defended them, especially talking about Enal Haq in Fihi Mafi. He said this was not a claim, but it was great tevazu, humility, because Enal Haq means that you He claims that the existence is specific to God, and if you say I exist, this is actually a sign of vanity. The reasons for Shathiyas to emerge is said to be it was seen that it was necessary to not be opposing the Shariat when you are saying the Shathiyya. Whoever says Enal Haq has annihilated their self and only God remains. So he claims, he doesn't say that he is Haq, seeing himself separate from Haq, but he says everything is Haq and there is no me, I am annihilated. And for a Sufi who experiences the mysticism and the secrets of the unknown world, it is impossible to not be ecstatic when expressing this to the outer world, but they still need to control this, he says. But unfortunately, since the Sufis are really overwhelmed with the state they are in, they sometimes cannot cover it, and they just express it with the verbal, physical phrases. It is not similar to anything that we know. It includes symbols and it is very dense. It's disguised. Signs and signifiers and Shathiyat can only be expressed with the language of Shathiyat, and the Salik forgets himself and is invaded with the ancient and destroys his current existence, and he becomes saved and freed from duality and reaches oneness. The lover and the beloved, the visible and the invisible are united, and once you reach the fena, and you now become the sayer of the words that belong not to you but to God. So Shathiyats are like the words of God which come out of the mouths of lovers of God or friends of God, and Arif and Haq are united. It's Vahdet-i Vücud, and when Hallacı Mansur says Enal Haq, it is like the Moses hearing the bushes talking, the Qasas Surah, like Allah talking from the bushes saying me, it is me. You can question this. Why is it possible to hear a bush claiming to be God, but it is impossible to claim to be God by a person? Existence is nothing more than one. So whatever kind of voice comes out of them, it is Enal Haq. Whatever is omnipresent is God's existence, and whatever is there is oneness, and it is actually blasphemy to see the duality. Neither the servant becomes haq, nor the haq becomes the servant. Neither Moses, nor Hallaj, nor Bayezid own this saying. The owner is haq. The haq speaks through them, talks through them. The last part of my presentation, especially in reference to Shathiyas of Harakani, how do they emerge? How do they exist in Nurul Ulum and Tezkiretul Evliya? There are lots of stories, anecdotes being told. I just want to give you examples from each one of them. About Fena and Beka, there's a Shathiyya of him. Sometimes I am his EBU'L-HASAN, sometimes he is my EBU'L-HASAN. When EBU'L-HASAN is in Fena state, it was his EBU'L-HASAN. When it was Beka's state, then he sees everything as himself, and whatever he sees was EBU'L-HASAN. About Tevhid, he is said to be the first of the Sufis to study Vahdet-i Vücud. Everything becomes him and you become non-existent. You are not, he is. You are not, he is everything. And when tajalli takes place, there shall be no sign of existence. When God is manifested, there is nothing else to be manifested. So this sacred love and lover and beloved are common in his words. One time he dreamt of God and he said to him, I am in your friendship and in your love, and I'm burning with your love. And Allah responds to him saying, you've been demanding for the last 60 years. We had asked for your friendship in the first day of the first days. And some examples I said I would share with you. The tasawwufi experience might create certain behaviors that do not go with the regular practice of life, like the sema and the Sufi miraj, and some weird bodily reactions can be mentioned among these. One important speaker talked about sema in the morning session. I won't repeat it. When he was invited to sema, Harakani stood up and he shook his cloth 3 times and he put his step down 7 times, and then the walls started to shake and he was warned to be calm, and he said, Sema goes to the deepest layers of the earth when you step your foot, and the other ones go to the highest levels of the sky. Otherwise, it would be disgracing the master Sufis, Junaydi and Bistami and others, he says. Bayezid Bistami is said to have said a lot of things. He is said to say, whoever travels on this earth has blisters under his feet. Whoever travels a lot in the heavenly skies has blisters in his heart. So actually he's been taken to skies, has seen heaven and hell, and tried to go to the bottom pit of the hell and tried to put it off, put out the fire. About the verbal Shathiyas, there's a challenge to reflect the experience. He says, how can I talk in this station that I am in? It is like a flame falling into a hammock. I would have pity to say his name when I'm with myself. I would be ashamed to call your name when I'm in myself. I would be ashamed of saying my name when I'm with you. Harakani was criticized for his Shathiyas claiming to be the Lord, and he said, I am the Junaid of this time, I am the Shibli of the time, I am the Bayezid of the time. A person said this to him, and Harakani responded to him, I am the Mustafa of the time and I am the Huda of the time. Sometimes we see that he makes sometimes he implies to be better than the other Sufis, and when somebody asked for prayers for them to reach Kaaba, he said, be at the place where Kaaba will come to you. And he says, I take the first takbir in Khorasan and I do my salam in Kaaba. I see everything from top to bottom. And the Shathiyas also include dilemmas, contradictions. Especially the Western researchers underline this. Some of them are as follows. I was so surprised with God's doings. It just made me lunatic all this time, but still it made me insane, but made me look like sane to the people. People think I've been talking to them this past 30 years, but I am talking to God. The people fish in the sea, the Jivan Mert fish on earth. One other features of Shathiyas is that to act in a cheeky fashion and conversate or interact in a cheeky fashion and to fight or argue with God, which is known as arbede in Tasawwuf. If the servant is an enemy to another servant, then God calls the judgment. If he is hostile to a servant, he is hostile. Lastly, Naz and Niyaz. Yesterday, Mr. Niyazi gave us a great presentation about Naz, and our chairperson also mentioned this in the opening. One night he is said to be doing the night prayer, and tells the story again about sharing what the hidden qualities of Harakani were, and Harakani said to God, do you want me to disclose what qualities you have? And both decided to stay silent. Ecstasy, overjoy, and intoxication. Ecstasy are the qualities that Harakani sets a good example for, and sometimes meaningless, useless, weird and stupid and crazy words are the words of a Shathiyat, but they accept them as the words from God, and they see the Sufi only as a harbinger, as a vessel or medium for the words of God, and they needed to be commented for meaning. They need to be translated. There are deep meanings to Shathiyas in terms of hermeneutics and analogy, and literature need to be studied together so that it can be dealt with properly.
Halil Bey'e teşekkür ediyoruz. Şathiye veya şatahat konusu.
We would like to thank Mr. BALTACI. Shathiyat and Shath issue is really difficult to understand. During the Ottoman period, so that the people wouldn't deny those words right away or immediately, and so that they could understand that these scholars articulated those words with meanings, they actually created mankibas. Muhyiddin Ibni said, "What you worship is underneath my feet." And they said, "You zindik," they argued, they accused him, and because he said that what you worship is underneath my feet. And someone thought, so this person said that, but maybe he meant otherwise. And they asked where he was when he said that, and they showed where he was, and then they did dig the ground, and there was a big cup of gold. So he said actually meant that. So this is a symbolic story actually. He was meaning the gold. And it means that when you hear the words articulated by those people, do not try to interpret yourselves immediately, but try to really understand what they mean. Our second speaker is Professor Emine YENİTERZİ. She completed her MA and PhD degree at Konya University, and Asma-i Nebi, about Asma-i Nebi, she studied. She completed her dissertation for MA and then PhD dissertation. And at this moment, she is working at Üsküdar University, the Institute of Tasawwuf Studies. Miss Professor will be talking about the concepts of Futuwwa in a 15th century epistle of in verse.
I would like to greet you all with love and respect. As you know, the Futuwwa is the name for the works that explain us the Futuwwa adab, and they can be divided into main three groups belonging to the Futuwwa organization, or to the Ahi lodges, or the Tasawwufi ones. But since Futuwwa is interrelated with Tasawwuf, all three groups' works are quite common and they share the same ground. There are many Futuwwa in Arabic and in Persian. Also, the first Turkic example belongs to Yahya bin Halil bin Çobanel Burgazi as the first one in the 13th century. Most of the Turkish literature Futuwwa are prose, and very little number of poetry versions are present. And Gülşehri Mantık-ı Tayr, Şeyh Eşref bin Ahmet Futuwwa, Esrar Dede Futuwwa, and there is an unknown author's Futuhname, and also an anonymous Futuwwa that is the topic of our presentation. So there are only 5 Futuwwa written in Turkish language. The only manuscript of this Futuwwa is in Marmara University Library. It is 87 pages, but the starting and the first and the last pages are missing. and it is only directly called Futuwwa. Who wrote it, we don't know. It's not mentioned anywhere. Only in the prologue it says that there was demand from the public in Tarsus for a Futuwwa being written, and there is the word of Da'i in that couplet, so maybe that might be the name of the author. So they demanded for a Futuwwa being written, and some of them asked Da'i. That is a reason, maybe thinking that Da'i was the person. It has 401 couplets, and the reason of it being written tells us that the people of Tarsus asked for a Futuwwa being written so that it will teach them the path, the way of Hazret Ali. And Ahi, he says that he wrote this book so that the Ahis would know the ways of Futuwwa. Nobody did know about Futuwwa. How would they even know the khirka or jame, the frock or the cardigan? So I wished to study this ilm so that I would collect it and write it in Turkish so that everybody would understand it. Has a really fluent, simple, basic language, and also he says that he has benefited from the previous works, Futuwwa, and the verbal knowledge, also the words and the practices of the mutasawwif. He says that he uses quotes from Qur'anic and also the hadith. He uses the Mesnevi of Mevlana. He uses them either verbally or spiritually. The stories of Adam, Shath, Ibrahim, Yusuf, and Musa are told, along with stories of Hazret Ali and Halaji Mansur. The first story is a little anecdote, and there was a dervish who did 40 chiles of 40 days each, and he becomes so weak and thin that his body becomes lighter than a teff, and he realizes he didn't take any steps on the path to Fena Fillah, and he says, don't ever try to do this through hunger. You don't have a share of this through hunger. Instead of staying hungry, eat the ni'mat of God and be grateful, since God loves the grateful. And then he makes bread out of his flour, and then while he was baking the bread, the smoke from the fire burns his eye, and he starts crying, and then a fakir comes and asks for bread, and he gives that only morsel of bread to the begging poor person, and he gives all of his bread to the beggar, and then the beggar praises God and is grateful to God. And when the dervish hears this, he doesn't feel hunger anymore and becomes very strong, and he says, God Almighty, you have made this one morsel that I gave to this hungry man more blessing than all of those 40 days of Chile. So he also tells us about what ahi is, and ahi doesn't collect and pile up, and it's not about greed, or it's not about being pursuant of worldly gains, not mistreating your brothers and sisters, not being deceitful, not disclose a secret, and does not worship the world, does not sell the religion for world, and he has always the look of God to everyone created and always tells the truth. It's like the sun. He doesn't look anyone as an enemy or a friend and sees everyone equal. It's a manifestation of the Halim quality of God. It is the address of serenity and peace, and is tolerant and very soft, and is not ignorant. He knows the ilm of Futuwwa, and he knows the necessities of ahilik, and every night or every Friday night he reads the Futuwwa Name, doesn't keep what he knows to himself. He asks what he doesn't know. He doesn't fight with anyone. He doesn't claim nobody being ignorant, and there is this analogy with the scissors, and it is used to shorten the hair, and this is one of the first traditions in the Evliya, because the license to use a pair of scissors is the sunnah of the Enbiya. This scissors ritual is known with Hazret Adem, and also the razor is important. It's also used for shaving, and the crown and the khirka and the razor are protected in the sky, but it was brought down to earth for the prophet. So this scissors signifies that they are ready to give their life for this path, and when the hair is cut, the scissors are held with the right hand, and you start from the right side of the head, and they say Bismillahil Ekber Hak, and whoever cuts his hair visibly cuts the head of his nafs invisibly. Also the crown. The crown also means cutting the head, which resembles to separate from the people, and that means when you are crowned, it means I cut my head, I have taken myself apart from everyone. And also the frock, the cardigan, the khirka. There's an anecdote about this. Hazret Cebrail brings 4 leaves from the tree of Tuba, which becomes a khirka for Prophet Muhammad, as was mentioned in the morning. Ya Ferdu Ehad, Wahid, Allah Samed are written. One arm says Ya Shekur, the other sleeve says Ya Gafur, one side says Settarul Uyub, and the other side says Gaffaruz Zunub. The dervish who wears the khirka is called khirkapush, and he covers the mistakes with his khirka, and he covers it in alignment with Settar, name of God, and he forgives in response to Ghaffar, name of God. He has the eyes, but they're closed to see the mistakes. His his hands would not hurt anyone because he cut his hands spiritually. He has the tongue, but he doesn't say bad words, and then he doesn't destroy hearts with his tongue. And then the dervish who has his hair cut is now worthy of being ahi. In the tradition of Futuwwa, the Yid, the person, the fata, actually, Yid, the brave one, the courageous one, is a lower degree than ahi, and they are very respectful and obedient of the ahi, and he does take everything coming from an ahi, even if they are bitter words. Shed is also an important tradition of Futuwwa. Futuwwa initiation takes place with Shed. It is between the believer and shaitan. It is a very long, narrow piece of cloth. Once you use it like a belt on your waist, it means that you actually tie your tongue with the name of God. It is done 7 times, and 7 knots represent many things. 7 skies, 7 stars, 7 organs on Sajda, 7 levels of the earth, Suratul Fatiha, Sebal Mesani, the 7 days of the week, the 7 rounds around the Kaaba. This is very important. So untying it is also 7 times. So 7 ugly traits are tied, and 7 positive traits are untied, like being a
Hoş ve kötü sözleri bağlanır, marifet ve mana gözü açılır.
the meanness is gone, the compassion comes, and hunger goes, and riyazat comes, leaves the people and opens the door of the haq, and leaves the nafs and goes to reza, and Fili Shaitani is tied and Fili Rahmani is untied. Ugly words are tied and Marifet and Mana is open. Ehli Shed is the name given to people who are on the path, who have given their self to the knowers of the path. And so this is like a brotherhood of the path. They are the sharers of the same path. This is that kind of brotherhood that to get rid of the torture of the hell, you go to your mom, you go to your father and ask for a blessing. They will both refuse it. But the ahi, who was his brother or comrade in the worldly life, gives him all the good deeds that he has done and takes over all of his sins that he committed. And God Almighty has mercy on them for being that giving, and they're both blessed with heaven. This is actually the topic of our presentation. Futuwwa is not yet known in the scientific circles and has not been cited among the Futuwwa. When I was working on this work, Kübra Akcan was also working on the text and the grammar of Mesnevi, and we got together by coincidence and we decided to have a thorough study of this Futuwwa. And Burgazi and Radavi's Futuwwa were used to compare the rituals and the terminology,
çok sayıda ortak terim oldu.
we realized that there were lots of common terms and words, but also they included different terms as well. So we wanted to scan the Turkish Futuwwa and to come up with a dictionary of Futuwwa terminology would be an important contribution. Thank you so much.
We would like to also thank to our professor. Hopefully, in the shortest time, this Futuwwa will be thoroughly studied, and we will have a chance to read, and it will be a great contribution to the scientific world. When I say the works, I would like to make a confession. In the market, there's a book called with the title of Harakani, and Fox Stations is the other title used for that publication. Risakel Tarikil Edhemiye ve Kullah and Chahartek is a Persian work, is a Persian study. So the story about it is that in 2008, I believe, when I was in Kyrgyzstan, they called me from Turkey and said, "Professor, in our study, in our city, we have a manuscript. It's in Persian. It's stated, it's claimed that it belongs to Harakani. Could you translate that?" They asked, and I didn't have time, and I said that I'm not going to be available. But they asked me to, refer someone who could translate it. And in Istanbul Department of Literature, there was Mustafa Çiçek, a professor, and I referred them to him, said that if he has time, he might maybe translate. And I didn't know the content of the book, so Mustafa translated the book, and another colleague actually made a thorough study on it. And I looked into the content of the work, and it turned out that a Kalenderi dervish actually wrote it a couple of centuries after Harakani, and the style used in that work actually was not similar to Harakani's work. When I said to Mustafa Çiçek, he said, well, this publishing house gave your name to me, so that's why for your sake I translated it. So if there's any sin committed for that translation, it's also a share of that sin is mine. Of course, it's a work, it's a good study, but I have to say that it is still of great suspicion that it belongs to Harakani or it was written by Harakani. But it's a study, it's a work we need to tell. And our third speaker is Hatice Dilek GÜLDÜTUNA. She is actually coming from the medical background, I can tell from her resume. Istanbul University, Cerrahpaşa School of Medicine was where she graduated from, and then she started being interested in Islamic and Tasawwufi Sufi studies. And in Ibn Arabi and Harb Symbolism was the title of her dissertation for MA in Germany, and also prepared a dissertation, and now she is at Istanbul Üsküdar University, the Institute of Tasawwuf Studies. She is a fellow there, and she will be talking about EBU'L-HASAN Harakani and the relationship between the Qur'anic concept of pen and the perfected man. The floor is yours, Ms. GÜLDÜTUNA. Distinguished professors, distinguished guests, Harakani says, listen to my words because they are filtered from the world of holiness. So we can tell that he spent his life serving for people and had a great influence. Mevlana in Mesnevi about Ashab-i Kahf refers to the verse that they are asleep, and he says that they are asleep night and day, and they are like the pens for Haq. And Harabi says that the Kamil, the perfected man, is like a pen, and it is the manifestation of Haqq through the symbol of pen. And the aim of this study is related with the concept of the pen, kalam, which is also a concept in Quran. As known, the concept of a pen is referred in 4 surahs and verses in Quran. In a surah, it is placed oath upon, and as a religious term, from the start of the universe to the end of it, it is referred as a divine pen. And there is also a hadith. Our Prophet was asked, what's amal for? Is it for the definite things or the things for future? He was asked, and he replies, no, not for the things for future. On the contrary, for the things that are resolved already. And then he is asked again, then why should we have amals? And our Prophet says, work, everyone will achieve what they are created for. And in another hadith, it is stated that Allah created the pen first and ordered write. And the pen asked what I should write, and he said, write anything that can refer to the world and the afterworld. So, qadar, the destiny, the pen of destiny, and the human will are the things that are related to it, but it is also expressed that it represents and covers the ilm of Allah. And in Miraj hadith, it is mentioned. After zikr, the Prophet says, I have risen, elevated to such a station that I felt the cracking of the pens. And these sounds that the Prophet heard were the pens that were writing down the judgment of God. So what the pen writes won't change, and the pens written by the pen, anything can be erased by God if willed. The repentance and the kindness might help for the sins written down erased. Every pen has a peculiar information, knowledge. They go to Felix, to the elements, and then to the plants, to the animals, to the human beings, and all created. According to their shortcomings, the written definitions are defined, and depends that are of divine characteristics, and they are related with the reflections taking place in the alam, in the realms. So the reflection and the manifestation is explained like that, and these sounds are heard from arsh, from heavenly skies, and according to many scholars, it is the mulk and the management of the mulk. Istiwa means settling down, dominating, and Ibn al-Harabi says, no matter in what situation you are in the will and management of divine names. And in hadith it is stated that the first thing created by Allah is mind, is the pen, and is the heavenly divine light of the Prophet. So Jabhar emerging from Allah, the most latif, the most perfect of it is Allah, and it has reflected, manifested in form of existence, and everything is available in the pen before they are even written. So pen, spirit are the words referred to it, the mind and the grasping. And kalam, the pen as a tool, as a mean for the things to be written. The mind, the intellect, that is meaning. It means ilm or of Allah, and the intellect is in ecstasy. Is to be given to the ones who has lost their intellect, and Harakani talks about that mahluk kul aql. Ulama is to be known with what Allah calls intellect, while intellect is blind. It does not know the path towards Allah by itself, and many did walk around mahluk, while I disconnected my relation with that. And Mevlana talks about the Sufis books and says that these are not only marks of ink. For Ibn al-Haraki, the Harakani, the last one, last embodiment of it is human beings, and it was combined with the first intellect. The human beings embodied all the realms, and everything available in the big realm has a reflection, has a similar one in the bigger realms. Aql kul, the Ibn Arabi talks about depends and how they can take one to the hearts of the velis. So the kulli spirit is the bearer of various fats, and these do show as ilm, alim, and Harakani is the one who had the biggest share of ilm. So the Kalam Surah also is the surah where the ahlak of the Prophet is praised. In the Shath, it is stated that their alamats are on their faces. The emergence of Hakika bring about their peculiar actions. It is like the spring coming. When the spring comes, different flowers do grow, while the zuhr of Haq, the emergence of Haq, is through different manifestations. The qualities are the qualities of Allah, and when Aisha was asked the ahlak, about the ahlak of the Prophet, she replied, it is a Quran. And that those, she said, who are engaged in the tafsir of Quran, and all those perfected men are in the center of existence station, and the reflection of that station is like, I am a human being as you are. And in Quran, those who do obey to you only obey to God, and those who do obey the messenger obeys Allah as well. So the thing that is obeyed and worshipped is Allah. And Abdullah, it is stated in the writings that was looking for the water of life. He drank so much of it, and neither he nor Harakani existed in bodily form anymore, and they annihilated. And divine Kemal, absolutism, and the first Tayyun can help that. So Haq is like a reflection. It becomes a reflection for all known. All what is known is reflected on that mirror, and that superior knowledge will be is entrusted through the manifestation of Allah. Those who understand that can understand the secret of God, the reason that the angels grovel for Allah. Harakani, in an interpretation for a verse, was asked, what does it mean that it was the revelation came to the servant? And Allah said, I am the mightiest, so I wanted you to know me. And as you are the smallest, I wanted you to invite the people for me. So those, Konevi also says that some are being satisfied with certain judgments of ilm, and Hak is the highest for the highest, and the zans are not written. The names they think about are the names of the names. So Konevi also talks about these limited people. There are those who, he says, pray on a high ground, and if they pray for Allah, they will be happy. If they come by a fitna, so if something against their pleasure, then they turn to themselves and deny and falls far from that truth. So Konani says that only the perfected people will have the right characteristics. So the perfected man can distinguish between what's disrupted and what's not. So when a murid has meanings in his heart or revelations, he would only ask it to his master, and only after his approval, by being subject to the words of the sheikh, he would internalize. And if it's the other way around, the murid, the student, would reject. And only the perfected sheikh's approval can make someone trust in any revelation in heart.
Gerçekleşebilecek bütün kemallerle tahakkuk ettikten sonra Hazreti Ömer hacca giderken, kardeşim beni de salih duandan unutma demiştir. Der ki Konevi, şu halde her birimize düşen vazife.
And Konevi says that everyone's duty is to know even the ikram by God is too much. One should continue to knock on the door of Allah. So their hearts are the ikram and the granting by God. And Harakani, when he was asked, says that I am the wholeness of Levh-i Mahfuz, and on the other hand, all the mahluka will be covered by EBU'L-HASAN, but EBU'L-HASAN, within EBU'L-HASAN, actually there is not even a step of room for himself. And according to Ibn al-Arabi, the pen reflects itself effectively, and the protected plate is created. According to Kashani, the Halak Surah, in the beginning of Halak Surah, Rab that teaches with pen has the highest level of ikram.
Kerem, generosity, are his qualities. He's also known as the pen of Kudret, the power. This also means that going towards Haq is not something one can attain through his work and his efforts and sincerity. Harakani says there are two paths. One is of Hidayat, the other one is of Dalalat. So the path to Allah from the servant is the path of Dalalat. But the road, the path from Allah to the servant is the path of Hidayat. And whoever says, I have reached him, has not. Whoever says, I have been made to reach him, has reached him. Necdet TOSUN says that the word Sufi is not created, is actually explained in that Risale by comparing Hazret Muhammad and Hazret Musa. Harakani says, I am surprised not to myself but to God. Without my awareness, all of this market has been put inside me and then made me aware of it. I am so weak against the uluhiyat of God Almighty. And Harakani says that the teacher with the pen is God, and he says we wanted because he wanted. Being a murid is the adjective, the sifat of Hak's Zat, and Hak Teala can only allow this to manifest in the servant. Otherwise it won't emerge or manifest in the heart of the servant. With another quality, the pen is actually the direct ilm that is being written in the heart without any change or modification. Kenan Rifai says that the words of the perfected man are reviving the heart and very impactful. Aklı kül, the total mind, the conclusive mind, is a chain on our nafs. It is a blessing, grace of God, and then he connects the heart to Hak. One word, one saying, after aklı kül reaches you. If it reaches you, then it is a guide for you, because that comes from the vitality. Necdet Daye, in his commentary for Sufi is not created, says the dough of Adam has been proven for 40 days with 2 hands, and Allah has given the sacred adjectives to the human body to reflect Hak. So Ibn Arabi says another quality of the Kalem is the initial, the primordial mind. That is why all of the ilahi, the sacred help comes to us. And greed is seen as a trait to be condemned by Ibn Arabi. But actually what needs to be cleaned is not the quality, but it's where it is being used. Actually being greedy and being this way are 2 qualities of the perfected man. So you need to be greedy for learning, just like Samiha Ayverdi says. For you are learning, you need to be greedy. And also when Allah praises the Prophet at the end of Surah Al-Tawbah, he says he is greedy towards them. So qualifies the Prophet as being greedy for the things. You have to have voracity and greed for the good deeds. And Attar says another quality of the pen is that you need to cut the head. If you think that you need to sharpen the wood, the top part needs to be cut so that it will be sharp and will be able to write. The writings of a pen can only reveal themselves on a really well-cleaned piece of sheet. Daya says for God to manifest in the heart of the Sufi, that heart needs to be cleaned from humanity and cleared so that the mirror, the heart, can reflect Allah. And this is actually a title that God bestows on them. It is a blessing. It's not something that comes from the Sufi himself. So the perfected man is the being that unifies all the levels and stations. So the existence of the sacred pen unites the passivity and activity, so their teachings continue since their lesson is eternal and they write with that pen to eternity.
Evet, teşekkür ediyoruz. Şu anda
Thank you very much. We have about 10 minutes for the Q&A. If there is any question for the professors, please go ahead.
önce sorunun kime ait olduğunu
First, please address to state to whom you address your question.
evet, mikrofon gidiyor.
Yes, the mic is sent up there.
Çok teşekkür ederim.
Thank you very much.
Şimdi Şatiye.
Shathiyat.
En önemli şatiyelerden.
Al-Hasan is one of the most important Shathiyats, we say. In my opinion, it's as such as well. The creation of the universe.
Şimdi en büyük buluş, en büyük buluşun ne olduğu.
The biggest, the greatest invention. People talk about the greatest invention in history. Some say it's electricity, some say it's relativity, the general relativity. But the biggest invention was through a telescope, which was the discovery of universe. Creation, and I think that it was it is not even an invention, or it is not to be considered only by that perception. This is about unity, as Sufism states, and a lot. There is some people do refrain from that word. The scientists or the physicists now all believe in Allah, and they turn their faces towards tasawwuf much more. In our era, it was not like that. There were many atheists, but the fact that there is a higher number of believers is because the science is advancing. And why then are people scared of the word analak? Because in Shathiyat, so analak is the greatest Shathiyat, and it is expressed very clearly and very beautifully. So, in your opinion, yes, you addressed the issue from different points of view. So do you think that it was a big piece of God, or was it blown by God? So 2 millions of galaxies, 2 billions of stars. So this is only what we can see and know, and this only corresponds to the 4% of the universe. The 96% of it is still not known. So as the science advances, there is a bigger and ever-growing interest towards belief and believing in God. So analog, the word itself is really fascinating. I am a physicist, so it also impresses me. So some people might have even the minor thoughts that maybe Allah would not exist. But looking at the way the plants grow and the babies are born, and these are maybe the miracles, but bigger than those miracles, there's this galaxy, millions of galaxies and billions of stars, the universe, which is of greatness. But still, when the word analog is articulated, people do scare away. So it's maybe like a small piece of God. In education system, people do sometimes refrain from articulating that we are coming from a small piece. Yes, anyways, so this is my question about So let's ask to our professor who made a speech about Shathiyat. So tasawwuf is on one hand refers to astronomy, on the other hand to psychology, to quantum and astronomy. So it's a very, very comprehensive field, and it's very much normal that it refers to various other fields. So what's to be careful about here is that the Wahdat al-Wujud and al-Haq, or pantheism, these should not be mistaken for one another. So we should be very cautious, very prudent there. And al-Haq, or the state of Fana, the Tawheed, Wahdat, these are related with the realms of Shahada. It shouldn't take us to the thought that everything collected totally means or equals to Allah. So we said this servants can't be Allah, and Allah can't be the servants. So you talked about that small pieces, the Wahdat al-Wujud, Maratib al-Wujud, within that Ahdat Waratib al-Wujud, that there is this greatness. So these are the issues that requires elaboration. But when we say an al-Haq, it doesn't mean that I am the God, or the universe is the totality of God. It does not mean that. So being deprived of or fani from his own qualities and ridden of human qualities or bodily qualities. So it is not like two materials being combined or embodied. Wahdati Wujud, when we say Wahdati Wujud, we may end up in pantheism. So it's like a kufr. So that's why we should be careful, and that's why in the beginning of my speech I said maybe we shouldn't be talking about such subjects everywhere or at every occasion. So that's why I was hesitant. But as these subjects are referred in the resources, I opted for such a subject. But I don't know if I managed to answer your question. So there's another question. Please go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a contribution. So Erzincan, where actually Mr. Baltaci lives, there's a person called Tüfekçizade Salih Baba. He says, the Sheikh and Dede Pasha says that when Mansur saw the face of the Prophet, he was attracted and said this word, an al-Haq. So if someone says it with ananiyat, with conceitfulness, then they will be kafir. But if they are without will, then they are Mansur. So Mansur and al-Haq, he said it. Mansur as Mansur and al-Haq, and he was asked to the Prophet. It was asked to the Prophet, and if the Prophet says it's a station, I also have been through that station. So this is not the essence of Tawheed. It's a station within Tawheed. So if the Murshid is able and is a perfected man, then he will has his followers walk over that station, experience through it, and leave it behind and not be mistaken. Yes, thank you very much. I also would like to share a story. Hoja Bahattin Naqshbandi says that during my tasawwuf training, Seyrul Sukuk, I had the desire to say what Al-Haruj said. I was willing to say Al-Haq, but I could only not help it. Was having difficulties restrain myself. I went to the center, and there was the gallows tree, and I said to myself, if I articulate an Haq, then my place would be only that gallows tree. So ecstasy, toxification, and so on. So when we are in such states, such feelings might arise, but the murids, the followers, should be taught to say entel hak, rather entel hak, or anatura, I am earth, I am of earth. So one should repeat that 1,000 times, then one can rid himself of the state that might take us to commit the mistake, to make that mistake. I guess now we will have a short coffee break, and after the coffee break we will be back in the room for the closing session.
Bir tane de Emine Hocam.
Efendim, Necdet TOSUN hocamız da buraya kadar zahmet ettiler. Sağ olsunlar, ayaklarına sağlık. Biz de kendilerine teşekkür ve bugün anısına ufak bir şey hocam.
Teşekkür ediyoruz.
Al gülüm, ver gülüm, al.
Mikrofon nerede?
Ha evet tamam.
Nasıl olsa yeter.
Zemini yapıyorum şu an.
Kalmadı kaç tane?
Hocam sahneye çıkıyor.
Efendim hoş geldiniz. Öncelikle güzel bir haberle
First of all, I would like to share a very good news with you about our symposium. There had been a revenue of 116,226 people accessed our broadcast during the week, and with our advertisements 97,532 people accessed, and 6,449 people followed the live broadcast, and for abroad 21,718 people reached us, and 2,383 of them visited the page. In total, in the foreign advertisement broadcast, we have reached 45,900 people, and 8,634 people visited the website, and the social media reached 20,000 people, and 10,000 people followed the live broadcast. As I've told you before, my encounter with Hazret Harakani was thanks to Sadık Yalsız Uçanlar. I have fallen in love with him in one of his books. I have fallen in love with the Nuru Muhammadi in his books. And when I came across the phrase, the Sufi is not created, just hit me at the bottom of my heart. Of course, there are lots of commentaries on that, but my master, Kenan Rifai Hazretleri, says, this hand, when it pops a zit, thinks that the hand has popped the zit. That is why he is the created. Whenever he comes to the realization that the popper of the zit is the brain but not the hand, then he is refrained from being the created. I want to share an anecdote with you. I was really impressed with it. Hazret Harakani, the night of his son's wedding, the sacred Sultan, he eats a piece of food that he really liked. He wasn't eating it until that day, saying, this food would prevent me from my love to God, which is an eggplant dish. And that night, he was gonna meet with another Sufi, and actually he comes home that day and talks to the spouse, and being the wife to Harakani is of course difficult. He's gonna meet Abu Suud, and he runs to the door, hearing the doorbell. He thinks that it was gonna be Suud, but actually he finds a package which includes the cut head of his son who had his wedding that night. And then the wife, of course, becomes very sad and says, this is because of you. But Harakani is totally silent, takes the head, the decapitated head, and washes it with Zemzem, and then the Ebu Suud comes and they have a great meshk and conversation which shakes the walls, and after that is finished, when he goes out, he says to his disciples, my dear students, with this conversation we have fulfilled our Hajj, he says, and then we have done our sacrifice as well, so let our pilgrimage be holy. And he says, if I was hung from a thread, and if all the disasters of the world were put on my shoulders, I wouldn't be impacted at all. He is a solitary, single, solid person, only filled with love of God. I would like to thank Harakani, the Hazret, for even allowing us to say his name with the grace of our Prophet. I wish that we have more of these symposiums, and our scholars here will increase the number of the studies so that we can actually tell the true Islam to the world. And now I would like to give the word to our first speaker, Professor Ahmet TAŞDİN, who is going to deliver us a speech with the title The Flow from Theory to Practice of Futuwwa through Fata to Fityan, Establishing a Connection Between Human Beings and Time. Esteemed guests, esteemed hocam,
I would like to greet you all. I would like to extend my gratitude to the organizers of the meeting, and then I also would like to state that for the past 2 days we have had the chance to be with a group of very much enthusiastic people. Everyone followed everything with great excitement, and our muhabbat is ongoing, and hopefully we will have more of it to come, inshallah. So against such an august audience, before such an august audience, to be able to make a presentation is a great pleasure and honor for me. And in Kars, in the second symposium of Harakani, on Harakani, I have had the chance to participate thanks to my Hoja Yavuz. I was included into the scope of the program, and from that date on it has been in the core of my studies. Futuwwa actually has been, and I gradually try my best to take a better grasp of it. Our Yavuz Hoja, our brother, actually I owe him a special thank. May he have a longer life ahead of himself, and his generations may carry on. As I am occupied with that subject, well, since the time I have been occupied with that subject, I have been trying to understand the words, the kalam of Awliya and the writings, and how those words can be better understood, or how we can really comprehend those words to their full extent in an era, in a modern era, and how we can transfer it over to our generation, our modern era. So for more than 20 years I've been engaged in those studies, and finally I have had the chance to observe that all those scholars actually addressed the issue from a holistic point of view, and they wrote those texts for many others, for the good of many others. And I'm still curious. I don't have a full conclusion, but my actually presentation will be about the flow from theory to practice of Futuwwa. That's why Harakani and the people he influenced in his time and their updates, their contemplation over Futuwwa, the cases, the issues they encountered during their times, turning his words into text writings, and rendering themselves as the walking examples of those writings, and taking us to an ocean where there's actually no cost. So the stories of those men of isles, how can these stories be transferred over generations, or how can those stories be understood in the best way possible? The stories are shared, the references are made to the hadith, to the verses, to the surahs, and the conceptual discussions are made, interpretations are made, and according to my view, the totality of the things, the total coverage actually, or the limits, the boundaries are not set, and at least I myself am desperate to set a boundary or a limit to the totality or a potential totality it might have or not. So the creation of the world, and also to the second time, the dehir, the creation of world, the first time of creation, from that time about which we have very limited information, to the second time, to our time in which we exist. I am thinking how we can relate the two, or ensure a convergence in between that time and our time. So these men, these figures, these scholars were the scholars of their time, and we as the human beings who are the visible, seemable parts of our world. So from that time, they tell a lot about us, and there's this relevance in their time and in our time. So the men of that Risale actually serve as a great bridge for us to relate those two layers, those two periods in time, that time and our time, and in what space, and also with what sorts of behaviors or attitudes or words to be articulated, we can achieve that connection. And in our time, the witnesses of the current time, how we are going to relate that with the past, with that time, and how can we connect this time and that time back in history through the Futuwwa or Risales, or be it some other texts. How can these texts going to help us? So Harakani, to be the witnesses of our time, like Harakani was of his time, and also like Ansari, like the students of his, how we can in our day can do what they achieved and relate it with the generations to come. The subjects in those texts, the subject matters and the context of those texts are difficult to fully grasp, and I'm not able to, I fall short to be able to answer the questions fully, but the fact that we are speaking about these subjects might bring forward further efforts, hopefully. So absolutely, that bridge, the men of that Risalet actually talked about that program only after they put it into reality in practice. So we are talking about the stories of the men who indeed practiced and realized the stories of their time. So Harakani says, what you have in your heart will be reflected onto your tongue. The heart is like a vast ocean, and whatever you have in your heart would be reflected onto your tongues. So articulating and carrying those words over generation from the perspective of Harakani, we can say Harakani himself stood in his own time of creation, and as the people in this current time, we need to absolutely have a certain experience to ensure what he did in his time. So I believe his words are very challenging to understand, but I'm an academic, and my work as an elderly is said to me is to cut and copy from there and here and come up with an article. This is what I can do only. In Ankara city, at such a symposium, when we have so many seasoned people, our Hojas, our professors, I talked about certain issues. I made my presentation in 12 minutes, in maybe 13-15 minutes, and I was done with my presentation, and a friend of mine said that we should visit an elderly person, and we visited that person, and he said the academics, the Hojas, would read from here and there and bring that piece from another resource and copy and paste them. And he said to me, you are like them. Have you seen the 3s, 4s, 5s that you talked about, those subjects? So I talked about the 3s, I talked about the 40s. Actually, the elderly person did not have any idea. So in between Dahir and Hin, the people who are in between and pending in between that Dahir and Hin, the person who is going to be able to, that will do it with Futuwwa, then they need to know how it is done, how the ingredients are put together, and experience it to its core. Then only they can only then be their students. So only by talking about them we cannot fully be engaged and occupy a space within the boundaries of Futuwwa. At least for me, it's difficult. With your lutf, you listen to me. With your patience, you listen to me. I would like to thank you all very much for listening, and thank the organizers for giving me the floor. Thank you very much. This is a tremendous interpretation, a great way of expression, a big lesson for us to grasp the hakika We need to experience, see the manifestations of haqq in the eyes of the murshid, learn from that haqq, and no matter at what level we are, without losing the sight of murshid, be aware of the fact that it is through the lutf of murshid, and it is the manifestation of haqiqah, but nothing else. So our professor really taught us a lot. We would like to thank him sincerely. Thank you very much. And now I'm very happy that I am going to introduce a dear friend.
Kamil'in 12 pirandan biri olan çok büyük bir mürşid-i kamilin.
We will now listen to the grandson of a great murshid, Syed Salman Chishti, and he is the grandson of Muhyiddin Chishti, and he was ordered by our Prophet to go to India, and without knowing any Hindi language, he has preached in his own language and taught people Islam and converted the Mughal Empire into Islam. He is the Sultan of miracles. His grandson, my dear brother, is an amazing person. He has always hosted us there, welcomed there. He has been a proof in flesh and bones how much of a giving personality one can possess as a grandson. He is the 26th degree grandson of the Chishti Dargah. The lineage goes back to Hazret Muhammad Prophet through Imam Hussein, and he has gone to Mumbai College for trade and economy. He has later got deeper into the Tasawwuf world, and he has researched the world of Tasawwuf. He has such a wide congregation of followers and disciples. One of the most well-known and largest communities in the world is the Chishti sect, and he will now tell us about the impact and similarities of Futuwwas of Hazret EBU'L-HASAN al-Kharaqani across Indian subcontinent Sufi teachings by Chishti Sufi masters.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Sayyid al-Mursaleen wa rahmatan lil alameen. Sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Karim would understand why I asked to come and stand and speak. Coming from Ajmer Sharif, bringing this joy and celebration of love, it's a great opportunity for us to be here in the august presence of the great elders who have been serving from generations to generations. In Ajmer Sharif, we have grown up listening to this Urdu Nazm, which is particularly was for all the places of the Awliya Allahs, the Khajgans, and the friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they say, Tera dayar hai dar as-salam ya Khaja. Your abode is the abode of love, O Khaja. Tajalliya hai subh o sham nayi ya Khaja. There was divine shower of tajalliyat every moment at this blessed abodes of peace. Na fikr mein na ghame jam tere maston ko. Those who have tasted the nectar of your unconditional love have no fear and no sorrow. Teri ek nigah se chalta hai kaam ya Khaja. that just with a loving glance of yours, our day-to-day life goes on. That's the power that has been bestowed upon the awliya Allahs across the world, that their abodes become the place of tajalliyat. There are some images from Kars. I haven't been to Kars, but inshallah I look forward to be there once. I've been to Harakani. At the end of the talk, we will share some images from Harakani, inshallah. But before we begin, I want to just share one very, very important experience with Hazret Cemâlnur Hoja, that all of you should know that today, after 10 years, that sitting next to him is not easy. The time that I met her first was in 2009 in Ajmer Sharif, when they came with a large group of 50 or 60 dervishes, when Hoja was speaking in Jaipur, and we had an amazing time, wonderful time with her presence in the Dargah. And after 2 days, she told me she's going to be in Jaipur for another few days for the conference. So I had to go to Jaipur, and I tried my luck to meet her, because you know she's very busy outside the Dargah. In the Dargah you can access to her, but outside the Dargah. So I went to the hotel in the evening, but they were out somewhere. And I was very nervous, being like just 26 that time. And I said, this is the first meeting outside the Dargah. What can I take for Hoja? So suddenly a quote of Maulana Rumi came to my heart that really explained the life of one who's serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I wrote that, but for that I have to buy something. So I went to the shop and bought a candle. And on that candle I wrote a note which says that life of a Sufi is like a candle. That in order to give light, you need to burn. And our Hoja here is a living example, a living feeling of those words which have been reached us from last 700 years, over 700 years from Hazret Mevlana. So thank you for accepting that gift and real enlightenment. And here in 2019, we all here. So that was something that I would like to share. But I'm not going to share the sayings of Hazret EBU'L-HASAN Harakani, because that has been already mentioned. But at the end of the talk, we will just have few words and few images that we have compiled into a presentation. Also elaborating about the life and time that last 2 days, yesterday and today, we have learned so much. To my own knowledge, I'm going so much rich. Tomorrow I'm going to go back to India, but really I'm going to go back so spiritually rich with these 2 days of experience. So thank you everybody for this. So talking about Hazret EBU'L-HASAN Harakani, Hazret Khaja-e-Khajgan, who's one of the Khaja-e-Khajgan referred to into the Indian subcontinent. I'm going to come to that part later about how explicitly it's mentioned in the Indian subcontinent, the life and times and teachings, which really form the foundations of many Sufi practices across Indian subcontinent. The famous quote, of course, which we received with the invitation was, whoever comes to this house, give him his bread. Do not ask his name or religion. For whomsoever has the honor of bearing a soul in the Dargah of Allah, the Almighty definitely has the right to eat from the table of EBU'L-HASAN Harakani. Well, this was the calling, because we have grown up right from my childhood, even before when our formal teaching in Tasawwuf or Islamic studies started, even before I heard the name of great mashaykhs of around the world, or I started my studies about life and times of different awliyas. We have been taught this thing without the mention of Hazret EBU'L-HASAN Harakani, but now after learning we know that from childhood we have been taught this, that whoever comes to Ajmer Sharif Dargah, never ask their name, never ask their religion, don't ask where they come from or what faith, what language they speak. If you have to ask them, just ask them one thing: how can you serve them? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with those means, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with those means of serving, go ahead and serve them. If not, then raise your hand in the bargah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pray for those who come. And always be in attendance and serve langar, the Sufi meal. The food that has been served in the Dargah of Ajmer Sharif, not from today but from last 807 years every day, is a veg Sufi meal, so that people from all faith, because in India we have large number of Hindus whose religious practices doesn't allow them to have a non-vegetarian meal. That's why inside the Dargah strictly vegetarian meals are served to whoever comes to the Dargah. So this is a one very deep connection that we have with Hazret Harakani radiallahu anhu. As per some of the written records and heritage presence of the tomb, Dargah, and the maqam of Hazrat Harakani radiallahu anhu is to be found in the town of Harakan, which is generally in the region of Bastam, which today is in the vicinity of Shahrod, near Seminan, which obviously comes under the Khorasan province. I have had the honor to visit all these provinces, Seminan, Bastam, Kharagan, even Turbat-e-Jam and Nishapur. Another strong riwayah, narration, and the presence strongly believe, and we believe that the final resting place of Hazrat Harakani is to be found in the mountainous region of northern Turkey, the city of Kars.
Harakan haricinde Türkiye'nin Kars adında dağlık bir bölgesinde de bir türbesi olduğunu
So Hazrat EBU'L-HASAN Ali ibn Ahmed or ibn Jafar ibn Salman al-Kharaqani or Sheikh EBU'L-HASAN al-Kharaqani radiallahu anhu is one of the early 10th century Sufi Murshid-e-Kamil as per the Indian Sub-Continent text that has been written in different treaties and manuals that has been passed on from different dargahs and khanqahs across Indian subcontinent. It was born in 1963, a common era in Khorasan in the village of Harakan, and one of the narrated that he passed away on the 10th of Ashura in the month of Muharram. Hazrat Harakani also received the spiritual transmission from Abu Yazid Bastami radiallahu anhu, like Abu Sayyid Abul Khair received the spiritual guidance from Sheikh Abul Abbas Ahmed ibn Muhammad Abdul Karim Kasab al-Amuli. Hazrat Amuli in Tariqa, but has a deep spiritual relation with Hazrat Bayezid Bastami, who had already passed away almost a century before. Now Hazrat Fariduddin Attar radiallahu anhu, in his famous Persian poet and the master in his Tazkiratul Awliya, which has also been extensively translated across India, has written about extensive chapters which later formed the basis of writing that reached the Indian subcontinent. The title that have been used across India, Indian subcontinent, are Sultan Salihin or Mashayikh, Sultan Behrubar, wa Ghaus Kutub wa Qibla of the people of his time. Hazrat EBU'L-HASAN Harakani radiallahu anhu was the master or the Shaykh or Pir Murshid of the famous Persian poet like Haji Abdullah Ansari, who is known as the Pir-e-Herat. I had the honor to visit him last year. Ibn Sina Shah Mahmud of Ghazna, Abu Sayyid Abul Khair and Nasir Khosrow had traveled to Kharagan to meet him and express their deep admiring feeling and respect towards him. Well, these are the images from Kars, of course. A beautiful turban, inshallah. We intend to visit very soon. The book Nurul Ulum, The Light of the Science, is dedicated to Sheikh EBU'L-HASAN Harakani radiallahu anhu. It is believed that it has been written by his disciple after he left the worldly abode. It is a single manuscript copy is currently held in the British Museum. All this have been, of course, been mentioned since yesterday. When he was asked about being a dervish, which is roughly the equivalent of faqr, spiritual poverty, faqr-e-fakiri, that is one of the hadiths of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Namely, it is the ocean that drives from three springs. The first, abstinence, the second is generosity, and the third is being independent of people. Again, Khaja Moinuddin Chishti is one of the important saying is based on these three principles, where he said that if one has to get close to the Creator, Qurbat-e-Haq, one has to develop these three qualities of nature. into one's own being. Sun like bounty, grace, river like generosity, and earth like hospitality. Because these three attributes of nature never make any distinctions and differences among the people when they are serving. The intention and the tasawwuf and the inspiration and the kashf of Hazret Harakani radiallahu anha came towards his deep longing for this qurbat-e-haq, closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Shura, which is translated, Rabbi habli hakman wal hikni bi'as salihin. Oh my Lord, make me perfect in knowledge and conduct and include me among those whom you have rewarded for your nearness, qurbat-e-haq. Hazrat Harakani radiallahu anhu devoted himself of everything, devoided himself of everything except Allah's oneness. Refusing for himself all titles and aspirations, he would not be known as the follower of any science, even a spiritual science. He said, I'm not a rahib, a hermit. I'm not a zahid, ascetic. I'm not a speaker. I'm not a Sufi. Oh Allah, you are one and I am one in your oneness. When asked about Hazrat Bayezid Bastami, Hazrat Harakani would say, when Bayezid was asked, I want not to want. That is exactly the wanting which the real desire is irada-e-haq. About fana and baka has been mentioned. I'm not going to go into that because we have limited time. I have to hear the hujjas here. So the meetings about Hazrat Sultan Mahmud Ghaznavi. But coming back now to the topic that I particularly want to put light, that the first instance that we found in the Indian subcontinent of explicitly mentioning about Hazrat Harakani was in the Kashful Mahjub, which was written in the 10th century by Data Ali Hajweri. He was a pioneer in the field of Hazrat Harakani studies in the Indian subcontinent. His great book Kashful Mahjub, which was written in Lahore, in those days, the Indian subcontinent has a vast boundaries. It's not what we have today, that last 50 years we have the partition of Pakistan, but this was all part of greater Indian subcontinent. So Data Ali Hajweri has explicitly mentioned that Hazrat Abu Syed was completely silent in the presence of Harakani and uttered nothing except when he was questioned. When Hazrat Harakani asked him why he was so quiet, he replied to his, one narrator is quite enough regarding an ocean. Data Ali Hajweri praises Hazrat Ahmed, the son of Hazrat Harakani. He says that Ahmed is the true successor of his father. This comment shows that Hazrat Hajweri had some close meeting with Hazrat Harakani's son, and he might have visited Harakan in the 11th century. Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi Masnavi was also one of the intimate part of all the Indian madrasas and the schools of suluk and dargahs. After the hadith and the Quran dars, the third most important book that was recited, this was taught among the Indian subcontinent, was Masnavi-e-Manavi. That was very much in practice until the Mughal, but when the Britishers came in, the practices kind of ceased down, and now we are struggling to even speak Persian. If the Britishers wouldn't have ruled the Indian subcontinent, maybe today we would have been speaking into Turkish language with you or Persian language with you. In the 1350 Common Era, Sheikh Zia ad-Din Naqshbandi, a prominent intellectual and poet of the Chishti order, quotes two sayings of Hazrat Harakani in the famous book Silk al-Suluk. And his source is again Tazkiratul Awliya. Hazrat Amir Khud, a Chishti Sufi writer, authored the first Tazkiratul Awliya in the Indian subcontinent. The name of the book is Siyarul Awliya. It contains the biographies of Khajgans of the Silsila-e-Chishtiya, and it is considered the most authentic record of the author's period. Amir Khurd Hazrat writes that Sheikh Nizamuddin Awliya, one of the major Murshid Kamil of Chishti Nizami order, narrated in one of his discourses that how some merchants has safe trade journey due to the blessings of Hazret Harakani radiallahu anhu. They were advised by Hazret Harakani to recall and enchant his name and tasawwur him when they are traveling so that they will be protected and saved. The source that is quoted into this is Tahfatul Barat by Sheikh Majduddin Baghdadi. Sheikh Sharfuddin Yahya Maneri in 1381 Common Era is a very famous Sufi of the Firdausi order in subcontinent. The collection of his thoughts and provoking are known as the Makhtubat-e Maneri, the letters of Sharfuddin Maneri. In a letter, Hazrat Maneri quotes that Hazrat Harakani was asked, what is your opinion about Junaid and Shibli, while Junaid came to the world in the state of consciousness and left in the ecstasy, and Shibli came and left in ecstasy. Hazrat Harakani replied, if Junaid and Shibli were given a new life and questioned how they came and left, they would be unable to describe. These were the deep analysis and discourses that were shared across Indian subcontinent. I'm sure I'm running out of time. I don't want to take more time, but another famous Sufi master, Khwaja Banda Nawaz Gesu Daraz, in the South Indian state of India, also used many narratives to these. And Hazrat Ashraf Jahangir Simnani, who was the Shah of Simnan, but left his kingdom to come to Indian subcontinent during the time of 1536. Common Era, during the Mughal Sultanate, he left his sultanate and came to Hindustan in the city of Kachocha, where he established the Chishti Ashrafi order. He also used explicitly about Hazrat Harakani in his discourses. Imam Rabbani, Mujaddid al-Thani, Sheikh Ahmed al-Sirandi in 1634, a well-known Sufi scholar in Indian subcontinent, also very well-known in Turkey through his Makhtubat Rabbaniya. In his Persian letters are the masterpiece of Sufi literature produced in the Indian subcontinent. In his 152nd letter, he narrates a famous story of the visit of Sultan Mahmud of Ghazna to Harakani and to visit Hazrat Harakani. Khaja Baki Billah radiallahu anhu, he also mentioned in his discourses, and the Mughal crown prince of the last Mughal before the British entered was Dara Sikho, who has written Majma'ul Bahrain. Dara Sikho also in his Majma'ul Bahrain, they used to tell him that the Mughal crown prince, who was not very successful in his kingdom but became an ascetic, used explicit reference of Hazrat Harakani. And in his Majma'ul Bahrain, he said about Harakani, he who does not exist is a Sufi, words from Hazrat Harakani. Hazrat Khaja Sulaiman Tosfi radiallahu anha, all these writings will be available for you to go in depth analysis. So hopefully, inshallah, in time to come, because this is such an important aspect of presence of these two traditions, right from here to the land of Hind to the Persian Empire. This was a brief outline, but we really hope that in the time to come, researchers should prepare more comprehensive biographies of Hazrat Harakani, his writing in the Indian subcontinent, in collaboration with the text that is available in Turkey. And I really hope that a comprehensive study should be undertaken with the proper, we can pay real and proper homage to the great Sufi gods of time, Hazrat EBU'L-HASAN Kharqani radiallahu anhu, from all of us. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Çok teşekkür ediyoruz sevgili dostum.
We are thankful to my dear friend, to my dear brother. Asuman, please don't get upset with me. You know who makes my heart melt. So those Hazrets have melted me since those times. Now we have a very important master, a very prominent scholar. He is so humble and always has supported us. Our master scholar, Mr. Süleyman Uludağ, I would like to invite, okay, he will be the last speaker. Now let's give the word to the owner of the word, our Yavuz Hoca. When I first went to Kars, I said, Hazret Harakani is visible in the Hoca, I said. Now I'll give the word to Yavuz Selim Hoca.
Aşka dayanamadı. Tamam, aşkını vereceğiz size.
Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Elhamdülillahi Rabbil alemin. Vessalatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammedin ve alihi ve ashabihi ecmain. Medet ya Şah-ı Merdan, yaranların sana hayran. Medet ya Şah-ı Merdan, dostların sana hayran. Medet ya Şah-ı Merdan, bülbüllerin sana hayran, aşık. Medet ya Abdülkadir el-Geylani, medet ya Ahmed el-Rufai, medet ya Şah-ı Nakşibendi, medet ya Kenan el-Rifai, medet ya Evliyaullah, ya Şüheda, ya Ricalullah, bihakkillahi a'inuna bi'avnillahi ve kûnû avlen lena billah. Asa nahza bifadlillahi alallahi derecatuhum daiman ve emedena bimededihim ve nefa'ana biberekati enfasihimil kudsiyye ve efad aleyhim ve ala ciranihim min berekati ve bi hurmeti ve bi esrari sırrı suretil Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alvarlı Efe Hazretleri Erzurumi.
Alvarlı Efe Hazretleri Erzurumi, when he went to Kars, he stood by the feet of Harakani, Hazret Harakani, and had a murakabe. He is a very great Evliyaullah, CHISHTY, and many other orders. He has the blessings of 5 different tariqat. He rests in Adwar. So he thinks and says to Hazret Harakani, I have a poem in my heart. Piri Harakani namtahani mütenahi.
Mirat-ı Muhammed sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem, Evliya Şahı, Tarik-i Mevla'da merdan iledir. Allah Resulü'nün aynaya baktığında kendisini görüyor.
Rasul of Allah, when he looks at the mirror, he sees himself. So he is the Shah-ı Merdan. That's why I wanted to start with this prayer. So we have international and national sultans, Hajas, peers, masters, researchers, scholars, who have made their way here, whose hearts are linked to Evliyatullah and Velayat. You are all here, we have all gathered here, and I am thankful. And for the past 2 days, we have been witnessing a great muhabbat, a great ashq, alhamdulillah. And at each symposium, at each congress or conference, we can observe that muhabbat, that ashq, that love, that longing of ours, but not at every congress or at every symposium. Years ago, in my opening speech, I humbly stated, when we started our activities, I had a fear with pleasure concomitantly. We started construction for mosques, guest houses, and I was concerned after we complete all the construction work, what kind of a services are we going to deliver? What should we do, I asked. What are we supposed to do so that these sultans who embraced eternity should be blessing us, and we shouldn't be off our grounds? I was asking to myself. And one night I had sadness, and it was still the construction was still ongoing, and I asked, Ya Sultan, what are we going to do? You did the Futuwwa for Anatolia, but what are we going to do? What is going to happen to us? what are we supposed to do so that we could be like you, or what you did so that it could influence. And the Mubarak made a sign, Sevr, Sevr, Sevr. Sevr cave. He pointed at that cave, and I in the morning went there and had tefekkür what happened in Sevr cave. Our Prophet, peace be upon him, Sıddık Ekber Yarigar, when he was with him and when they arrived in the cave, Sıddık Ekber had a fear in his heart. You might reckon, what if they find us? What if we can't do it? What if we can't make it? He was asking what we would do. He was asking. And the Rasul of Allah, peace be upon him, to Sıddık Ekber for the second time told Tevhid. Sıddık Ekber this time had another fear in his heart. Our Prophet, when he ordered Tevhid, all the signs, they all manifested, all the ilm manifested for our Prophet, and all the ilm, all the irfan, all the tawhid, nubuwwat and risalat, all of them by him was injected into Sıddık Ekber's heart. And whatever God blessed me in my heart, I do the same for the heart of Sıddık Ekber. And that's why he said, I wish I was a piece of hair on the chest of Ebu Bekir, Hazret Ebu Bekir. So that Futuwwa, that Fath, actually takes inception from there on, from Hazret Adam to our Prophet, and from our Prophet to the eternity. The hakikat of Tawheed, and Tawheed is transferred from one heart to the other, and that Futuwwa will be manifesting until the end of the existence, until the last hour. And that's why Hazret Harakani said, every century from a womb of a mother, a deserving one will rise so that he can do the Futuwwa for that generation. And he carries that secret and practices that Futuwwa. And when it was Harakani, Hazret Harakani's time, every night he used to do the same prayer, Huda, for the libas-ı marifet. Bless EBU'L-HASAN with that. And EBU'L-HASAN, now it's time for you to sit. It means two things. You are standing, you might sit, or you might sit and start irshad. And Sıddık Ekber, when he had the fear, the same fear in his heart, was in the heart of Hazret Harakani. And he said, have your hopes high. According to many, after Zahiri ilm, Harakani turned his face to Sufism, and Beyazıt Bestami said, EBU'L-HASAN, Elhamdülillah,
Elhamdülillahi Rabbil Alemin, Er-Rahmanir-Rahim. Sonuna kadar oku.
recite till the very end. So after reciting Fatiha, he said, all the ilm filled into my heart. So in their talks, whoever, he who comes to that door, give him his bread, don't ask for his belief. As our Hojas, our masters stated, everyone who carries a spirit in the station of God deserves a piece of bread in that table. So La ilaha illallah was
La ilaha illallah Muhammedur Resulullah.
How he was bestowed with revelations. And Harakani started talking with Lisan-i Qudsiyeh, the holy language. Why? The hikmat of divine existence, its alamat, alamiyat, would continue until the end.
Benim görevim şudur. Herkes sabah kalkar, alim ilmini artırmak ister, abid ibadetini artırmak ister, zahid zühdünü artırmak ister, tacir ticaret yapmak ister.
The scholars want to have more ilm, and EBU'L-HASAN wanted to bring in peace and happiness to the heart of another brother. So the Siddiq Efendi, when he had this fear in his heart, God sent his order. Fear not, Allah is with us. And this is the fat, the conquest of Anatolia, my Sultan. Otherwise, the words would not suffice. Or with volumes, writing volumes of books is not tantamount to Futuwwa. So ilm, muhabbat, love, ashq, a tear, a shilver is what shakes Anatolia, and it is the Rasul of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Harakani, Abdul-Hadir Geylani, who Medad who. So they conquested, they did the fat, that understanding, that shoot, that maneviya, that non-existence. This is what conquered Anatolia, not only Anatolia, but the whole realm. If you cannot conquest the hearts, your armies will be in vain. You can do nothing. So the USA, their armies, their troops, or the artilleries of Russia, or whatsoever, this is nothing. Siddiq Ekber Effendi, after the order of Tawheed in his heart, the fear he had indeed was likewise in the heart of Hazret Harakani. And the reason we are here is because we have the same fear in our hearts. My Sultan.
Ben şimdi haddimi aşacağım, kusura bakmayın. Harakani Efendimiz öyle buyurdu. Buyurdu ki
So I'm going to go beyond my limits. Harakani said, think the cave, the Sayr cave, because our Siddiq Ekber Effendi said, as Harakani delivered, when you are far from Futuwwa, when you are far from heart, when you are far from spirit and inspiration, the hakika of divine unity, the ilm, when you fall far from it, go back to basics, go back to the beginning, because you are now back in the beginning stage, Harakani said, and you will do as the others did. That's why Ahmet Sultanul Evliya and the others say the same. We need to go back all the way to the beginning. Think about a ring. The beginning and the end of the ring is haq. Both the beginning and the end of that ring is iman, or is belief. In the beginning you might have a kalam, but not a hakikat in the beginning, but the end is hakikat. The beginning and the end, both is Muhammad. Both are Muhammad. So the beginning of the ring and the end of the ring, both are of Muhammad. That's why Harakani shook. That's why Bestami shook. But what did they do? They actually took those out of their villages. Their words were not understood, and they cannot be understood. You have to go to your heart. You have to look into your heart. Leave conceitfulness aside. Once you hold on to it, it will take you to the true owner. Without further ado, Fethi is waiting, so our Sultan of Bursa is here. He will take the floor. He is an ahl and master, a master of ilm. He is a master of science and ilm. Me, I am in ajz, I am miserable. What do I have to say? So with all those talks, will I conquer Anatolia? No. You will give food, you will give shelter, you will give clothes, and so on. But you might have sabab, you might have some station, you might go to heaven, but by doing that only you cannot find haq. To find haq in haq, you have to annihilate, you have to go non-existent in haq itself. When Sultan arrived in Kars, there was a conquest. He had breakfast. I prepared my breakfast, but my wife Sultan, she was an Abdiya. She's now with my prophet. So when she's with me, I cannot say I did it. I always say she did it. But she gave me the order, and I prepared the breakfast. And we had the breakfast, and it was the morning, and I sent them back to Istanbul, and Hazret gave a sign for me and said, write a poem for Cemâlnur. And I wrote a poem. I beg you, please forgive me, my Hoja Süleyman. I cannot stand but read that poem. The lovers who saw the nur of Jamal starts whirling around fire. From their eyes, blood drops. For years you burned for Hijran. It burned. You can see that it's dry over there. For years the ashiqs burned for Jamal. You watched the alam and got to the alam. And at the end you wore the cardigan of Melamet. And at your divan, we have the loyals. The roses you sing with Esma of thousands times. Those who have their hearts burned would watch that Jamal. So we are watching that Jamal. We have from people, all the lovers from Bursa, from other countries. We are watching that Jamal. La feta illa Aliyyül Ekber. Eyledin ehli beyte can fedalar. Melekler setredip sırrını gizler. Felekler daim cemalin özler. The angels miss and are longing for your Jamal. Bestow us with Feth, my God. They are waiting at your gate. Open the gates, my God. Open the doors for conquest of Anatolia. Medet my Pir Sultanul Harakani. Bless, bestow us with Hayat Javidan. We are the admirers of the Nur ul Jamal. May thousands of lives be sacrificed for you, and may you hear the sounds of conquest.
terk etti can ile bahşi merdaneler. İşte bu fetih sırrı.
So that secret of conquest dates back to long time ago, to Karbala. So it is not a fabricated or a make-believe conquest. It was not possible only through words or through writing words. The Mastanas, the Divanas, the scholars, the alims, the believers, they were all waiting at that gate so that the gate would open for the conquest. All that ilm ilahi is transferred from heart to heart, from our prophet to our day, from our day to the doomsday. It will continue. May Allah bestow us, bless us with that conquest. May Allah open our eyesight. I have never heard anyone who says that may Allah open my eyesight. Everyone asks for money, villas, or fields, or plots, or cars, and so on. But may Allah open the path for us for true heart sight. El-Fatiha.
Kısa kestim, kusura bakmayın. Söz Sultan'ın Evliya'da. Bursa'nın Şah'ında. Buyurun. Başkentten geliyor. Buyurun.
This is from the Shah of Bursa. This is from the capital. Esteemed audience, first of all, I would like to greet you with a sincere and deep respect, and I ask for forgiveness and grace from God. In those days, getting closer to Holy Ramadan, I hope the Ramazan Sharif and the Eid will be beneficial for all of humanity and all the Muslims. EBU'L-HASAN Harakani's standing in Tasawwuf is the topic of my speech. First of all, I would like to share with you, at this time of the afternoon, having this much of a crowd present here shows us how they listen to us with attention and with devotion is really praiseworthy, and I see it as a very good sign. So I would like to congratulate you all and let God Almighty increase your ilm and increase your faith. EBU'L-HASAN Harakani, who is he? He is a human being. He is a Muslim. He is a Sufi. He is a Mutasawwuf. He is a Civan Mert. He is a Ehli Futuwwa. He has four main qualities. Why did I mention those four qualities? Because EBU'L-HASAN Harakani, as a human being, is a person who has common needs, common feelings, common thoughts like the next one. He's no different to any of us on that aspect. Qur'anic Kareem says that Hazret Muhammad Prophet should say, I am only a human like yourselves. EBU'L-HASAN Harakani, as I said, is a Muslim, is a believer. He believes in God. He believes in God's oneness. He believes in God's book. He believes in God's prophet. He is a believer, and he is liable and responsible for everything that every believer is responsible.
EBU'L-HASAN Harakani
Thirdly,
bir sufidir.
he is a Sufi. He is a
Hazreti Peygamber
mutasawwif.
zamanından başlayarak
Starting
günümüze
from
kadar
the times of
geçen süre
Prophet
içerisinde
Muhammad, during all
Evliyaullah
those
diye geçen
years,
Kur'an-ı Kerim'de hak
as
dostları denir,
mentioned in
takva
Qur'anic
sahipleri
Kerim,
denir, Allah'ın
Evliyaullah,
salih
the
kulları
lovers
denir.
of God,
Böyle bir
friends
cümle
of
her
God,
zaman vardır. Hazreti
the
Peygamber
blessed
zamanında,
servants
tabi'in
of
zamanında
God
ve
are some of the
tabi'in
names they are
zamanında
called
olduğu gibi daha
with.
sonraki zamanlarda
In
da
the
olmuştur.
following times,
Takva
there had
sahibidir.
been
Tekrar
people
edeyim. Takvanın
who
manası
are
Allah'ın
the people
emirlerini
of taqwa.
hassasiyetle
People of
yerine
taqwa are
getirip
those who
Allah'ın
observe
yasaklarından
orders
dikkatli bir
of
şekilde
God
kaçar
carefully
ve
and they
Allah'a
refrain
menkul
from
olarak
God
ibadet
has
eder.
banned
EBU'L-HASAN
and they
Harakani'nin
pray
sufiliği
and
böyledir.
worship to God. And that is the kind of Sufi Harakani is. He is also one from the Futuwwa
Şimdi
Ehli Futuwwa. So he is a Jivan Merd, a courageous one. So let's talk about what he is not. First of all, he is not Allah, Hasha. He is not a prophet, Hasha. So what is he? He is a true and certain servant of God Almighty and a loyal member of the Ummah of Prophet Muhammad. We need to know this for certain. He called himself the Bistami of this time. I am the Junaid Baghdadi of this time. And somebody else responded to this in a competition. And then they said, if you are Bistami, I am Huda. I am Muhammad Mustafa. In his menaqib, we read these. If you don't take into account the start and end of the discourse, if you skip the context, you might misjudge him. So you need to know the context. You need to know the time and the place and the meaning of what he said. If you just look at the external meaning, the zahiri meaning, you will misjudge the awliya and you will be condemning and criticizing the friends of God, awliyaullah. God forbid us from doing that. So we need to clearly conceive the message meant behind those words. To understand properly the awliyaullah, you need to refrain from weighing them in your scale. You need to weigh yourself in their scale so that you can understand how lacking yourselves are and how full the awliya are. So we can't try to judge them and we can't condemn or blame or criticize them with our limited approach and scale. We should either keep silent, and if we clearly want to understand them, we need to talk to the qualified ones so that we can properly conceive what they said and who they were. Futuwwa, like the word tasawwuf, is not mentioned in Quran, it's not mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet. Neither tasawwuf nor futuwwa are not mentioned. But different to tasawwuf, the root of the futuwwa, the word fata, is mentioned a couple of times in the Holy Quran. What does it mean? Fata. Fata means young man. It's a young, courageous person who is bold, who is heroic, who is courageous, strong, powerful person. actually the power and the execution of the powers of God. God has kudret and God has kuwwat, power, kuwa and kudra. And the servant is powerless. We can only have as much power as God allows us to have, which is a limited power. The absolute power, the endless, limitless power belongs to God, and it only is owned by God. And we are all responsible to make the best use of that power. Do we use it for evil or do we use it for good? This is an inherited power from God, and this power and this discretion has been given us in custody by God. If we can use it properly, then we call it justice. As statesmen, as administrators, or as the head of the family, whoever has the power of ruling in the family, like God ordered, that is justice. If we use it righteously, that is justice. If we use it unrighteously, then that is torture or violence, zulm. And zulm, you know, is misplacing something or misusing something. So only the just and fair people are truly powerful. With the power they get from God in whichever title or station or level they might be, they act righteously and fairly and justly. So we should not just get stuck with the words, but the concepts. The history of Futuwwa is as old as the history of humanity. But in its relation to Futuwwa, I want to give an example from Hazret Ibrahim, because this word fata is in reference to Hazret Ibrahim in the Quran. He's called EBU'L-HASAN, the father of the prophets, and as you know, after our namaz, we also do the salam and salawat for Hazret Ibrahim, because he is a very prominent figure in Islam. And in his times in Mesopotamia, in Babylon, there were the idol worshippers, and then a prophet is sent, and they are asked to worship in the times of Nimrod, in the times of Babylon. They were asked to be monotheistic, and Hazret Ibrahim takes the axe one night and he goes to the idol shrine and he breaks them all, and he just doesn't touch the biggest one and hangs the axe to the neck of the biggest idol, and in the morning everybody sees the idols broken, and everybody asks what has happened, and somebody says somebody called Ibrahim a fata. Fata called Ibrahim was there, and it dates back 3 millennia. And they say Ibrahim might have broken the idols. And actually Ibrahim alayhi salam actually broke the idols. And who is he? He is the breaker of the destroyer of the idols. In a time of multi-theistic time, he has had the courage. He has been the heroic personality. He was a feta. What do the Sufis say when we talk about power and strength? The Sufis say just like the heroic acts of the qualities of warriors in a fight, the Ehli Futuwwa means the idol breaker. the breaker of idols, because he has the courage and the strength and the power to break the idols, to demolish the idols. So what is an idol? An idol is actually the ego inside us. That is the me inside me, the self inside me, the selfishness, the egoism inside us is the idol. That is the idol we need to demolish. In one of the hadith, we are told that the biggest enemy to human is the idol inside you, the nafs, the self. Another hadith says, against the enemies of Islam, we need to do jihad. It is an order of God, but our biggest enemy is inside us. So the biggest jihad is against ourselves, our own self, which is called the greatest jihad, Jihadul Akbar. So if you succeed in the Jihadul Akbar, you will only be successful if you beat your biggest enemy inside. So when we look at this concept within the Quranic verses and hadith, is it meaningful? Yes, it is meaningful, because the Quran says, God Almighty says,
nefsin heva ve hevesini putlaştıran, ilahlaştıran insanları gördün mü? Bunları
have you seen the people? Haven't you seen the people who have made their egos, their desires and greed an idol to themselves? Haven't you seen those people who have idolized their ego, their self, their desires and greed? So they are self-worshipping people. Have you not seen them? Allah asks us in Quran Karim, who admire themselves, who adore themselves. And it's not limited with this. They idolize themselves, and they also idolize some other people. That is the idol breaking. This also exists in the Western culture, but in Islamic history, in Futuwwa, breaking the idols mean you have to have this war towards your nafs. This is Jihad Akbar. This is the major war. So Hazret Ibrahim is the first person called as fata. A second quality of tasawwuf is that to be
aynı şekilde mali fedakarlıktır. Malını, mülkünü, sahip olduğu şeyleri yeri geldiği zaman Allah yolunda harcamaktır.
So it is about giving to other people, to be able to share your goods, your belongings, your materials.
Onlara söyle Allah yolunda mallarıyla.
Generosity is very important. We are asked to be generous towards people, either generous with our life or with our belongings and wealth. And our Prophet is very, very welcoming, and he always has hospitality towards people. And a Mejusi comes to his house one day, and the Prophet Ibrahim says, I will host you in my house, even though he is Mejusi. Oh, okay. He says, I will host you only if you convert to Islam. I can't host you as a Mejusi. And he gets upset and he goes back. And then there's a revelation from God to Ibrahim. He says, you, Ibrahim, we created that person as a Mejusi. We have given him his sustenance for 70 years. We haven't asked him to convert. We hosted him for 70 years on this earth. What would you What would happen to you if you were graceful enough to host him just for one day without asking him to convert? We have done this for 70 years and haven't asked for his conversion. Why haven't you been the one to host him just for one day? So then Hazret Ibrahim becomes really upset. In the times of the Muhammad Prophet, also the same thing is seen. And our Prophet Muhammad goes to Uhud war and with the Sahaba, and they got beaten, they couldn't win the war, and the non-believers' arrows wounded him. He had a broken tooth, and Hazret we can't hear him. And another one of the Sahaba made himself a shield in front of Prophet Muhammad to protect him from the arrows and the stones of the attackers, and he lost his arm, and he has always been disabled, having lost one arm. So that is also a futuwwa. So whoever needs protection, you have to give them that protection. Even though you need it yourself, you will share your means with the needy. Preferring someone else over yourself, even though your needs are also not met, that is called futuwwa. A verse from Quran. When the Sahaba immigrated to Medina from Mecca, they have no belongings, no worldly wealth, but the Ansar shares everything they have with them. And when God Almighty mentions this, He says, Ansar are the kind of people who meet other people's needs before their own needs are met. So that is the definition of futuwwa. Another incident, Mehmed Akif also mentions futuwwa in Safahat. In a war, when the war is finished, one Sahaba is walking the battleground with a bottle of water, and he saw a relative just about to give his last breath, and just when he's gonna give it to him, someone closer says, "Water, water." And the person who is giving his last breath says, "Give water to him first." And then this one says, "Give it to other person." So after going to 7 people, after when he is done giving water to 7 people, the first person has already died. So this is actually the ideal case of futuwwa. Futuwwa is humanity. Futuwwa is true Islam. The Sufis say, I want to specifically underline this, being humanistic is very important in Islam. Ebu Said EBU'L-HASAN is another sheikh who lived in the same times with EBU'L-HARAKANI. And they ask him, what is tasawwuf? And he says, seeing all the people equal and only looking at God and justness and fairness and seeing everyone equal and treating them just. And Yunus Emre tells us to see all 72 tribes of humanity from the same perspective, and in the times of the Sufis, we see the signs of humanism and respecting the rights and responsibilities of humanity.
Yürü ki meydan senindir bu gece ya Süleyman Şah.
Şunu söyleyelim. Yani Bursa'nın sultanı falan diye.
They called me the Sultan of Bursa, but only if I could be a Shakir, only if I could be a people of the Sultans of Bursa, I would be honored. So this is the background of Futuwwa. It existed, of course, in the times of Hazret Muhammad and then in the times of Sahabe, Tabi'un. This goes until to the end of the 5th century in the moon calendar. And in those times in Iraq and in Khorasan, there were some tasawwuf movements and communities, and those in Iraq are called Sufi and Mutasawwuf. In Khorasan they are called the Ehli Futuwwa, because Harakani is not born back then, and even his Sheikh Bayezid Bistami is at the last days of his life. That's the times the Khorasan Sufis are called Ehli Futuwwa or Melawi. The Baghdad Sufis praise the Khorasan Sufis, appreciate them, they like and favor them and the way they live, and this is way before, 150 years before Harakani. EBU'L-HASAN al-Haddad, another Sufi, is one of the prominent figures in Khorasan for the Ehli Futuwwa. When he was asked what Futuwwa is, he says, he defines it as is to have mercy and to treat everyone equal, to watch the rights of everyone, to observe the rights of everyone, but not to expect mercy from anyone else or tolerance from anyone else. Because if you are merciful and accept for mercy, this is not actually being a merciful person. This is actually an exchange. This is an exchange. This is an expectation of a response. This is not Futuwwa. Futuwwa is only doing it for the riza of God, for the contentness, for the favor of God, for the sake of God only, not for an expectation of a response or getting mercy from others or appreciation from others. He leaves Khorasan and goes to Baghdad and then meets the Sufis in Baghdad, Junaid Baghdadi being the first of them. They conversate. That was a tradition, to visit each other and to talk with each other, to call on each other, to learn, exchange from each other, to talk and discuss issues with each other. Ebu-Hafs is asked, what is Futuwwa? Ebu-Hafs is asked, and he says, Futuwwa is something done, not something said. It is where the word ends and the action starts, says Junaid Baghdadi, because he says there is no more word to say, so let us get up and get going. Talking about Futuwwa, talking about the literature or the sermons or preaching of Futuwwa is very easy, but being the Ehli Futuwwa is very difficult. And Ahmet bin Hadrawai was a Sufi master, lived in the same times with Junaid Baghdadi, and his wife is named Fatma, and one day they go to visit Bayezid Bistami, but they're both Ehli Futuwwa and they're very pious people, religious people, and Ahmet bin Hadrawi previously invites his friends and not only the poor and the poorly people, but the friends are also invited, not only the poor and needy, but the friends are also invited for a feast. So helping and offering to their friends is also a tradition. And they gather for the feast and they sacrifice, they butcher a cow, and the spouse wife says, she says something is missing. He says, okay, you have done everything right for your guests, but there is the issue of dogs of the neighborhood. You have to cut them a donkey so that they can share, they can get their fair share of this feast. The dogs also need to have their fair share. Cut a donkey for them so that they will also have their feast. This person later goes to visit to Bayezid Bistami, and Ahmet bin Hadrawi says to Bayezid Bistami, Hadrawi asks to Bistami, what is Futuwwa? And Bistami's response is this: learn Futuwwa from your wife Fatma. Fatma asked for the dogs also to be fed by a donkey. So also the years 1200, 1300, he died in 412. Kushairi also mentions about these stories, and this is the Futuwwa they had. This is the moral of Futuwwa. This is what we mean. Futuwwa is a different thing. Is this not in Islam? Of course it is in Islam. I have given examples from the Asr Sa'adat, from the times of the Prophet. Of course it initiated and emerged from that, but and then it has developed. The Harakani is the representative of this school, and he is a very well-known member of the Ehli Futuwwa of the Khorasan region, and later this Futuwwa movement continued, and it ends with EBU'L-HASAN, and after the Abbasi rule starts, and in the ruling of Abbasi the political reign gets weaker, and the anarchy, terror, and the loiters emerge, and lots of injustice, beating, gangs, and lots of tasks and fees and money being collected from people to protect them from the attackers. They call them Shathir and Ayar. Ayar has been used later, or Shathir has been used later as a label for the protecting them from these rackets and beatings and taxes. And in the times of Nasr bin Allah, there was no governing authority, the military was powerless. He has lived in in 1180, and he collects the groups and the communities together, and he declares himself as the president of the Futuwwa, and he says, wherever you find Ahl Futuwwa, and you bring them here, you help them, and they will help you to set the order. And this is a very important event that he established, this structure to protect the rights and law of the people. And he has sent Suhrawardi to Anatolia to make Anatolia a land of Futuwwa. Ibn Battuta comes to Anatolia during that time, and there are the Zawiye of Ahl Futuwwa, and he visits those Zawiye, and that journal, that travel journal, has been translated, and you can see his services, how he serves the needy and the poor and the travelers and the people who are sick, and the Ahi Evran and the Ahi organization started by him is also quite intermingled with this structure. They have had a major impact on the government's economy and social life and the cultural life and the artistic life, because the Ahi structure served the society by trying to produce the cheapest, strongest, most durable goods, and they gave the best services, not to please the public, but to please God. So actually, from the start of Islamic religion, among the Sahabe, among the first Sufis, and after Harakani's time, the other era needs to be separately assessed because they differ from each other. Instead of Futuwwa, sometimes the word Muruwwet is used. Muruwwet actually means humanity. Humanistic is Muruwwet, coming from the word mered, and it's the same meaning with Futuwwa. When I think about these topics, sometimes I think what would happen if we could conceive the true meaning of it as it was in the historical times, if we applied, practiced it, executed it, would we even need the Western notion of humanity? No, I believe we wouldn't, because we wouldn't be attracted by their notions, but they would be attracted by our notion of Futuwwa, and they wouldn't the notion of humanity. I would like to greet you all with love and respect to wrap up the talk. Thank you so much to our dear scholarly Hoja, and I would like to share one sentence from my Murshid, who said, you will love the people, you will love them so much that you will be born with their birth and you will die with their death. I will ask for another 5 minutes from you instead of Q&A. Our Hoja asked for us to have a movie to watch, and Emre will recite an ilahi that he has composed himself. Now the podium is yours, Emre.
This is
Bu çok kısa bir
Hazret Kenan Rifai Hazreti in a symphony. So I thought it would be appropriate to close this with a symphony that was just done by A.R. Rahman of the Chishti Qawwali. Not word, this is just an instrument and some sayings that I had mentioned that we can share. So maybe with the instrumental meditative music from A.R. Rahman, we could connect with the ilahis of Hazret Kenan Rifai.
meditasyon yaparsak Hazreti Kenan Rifai'nin belki ruhuyla temasa geçebiliriz.
Sonra yapın bitir işte. Onunla bitir. Sizle bitirelim. Evet.
Cemalin nurunu gören aşıklar pervane ve şinare dönmeye başlar. Gözlerinden akar kan ile yaşlar. Cemalin şemine düşen aşıklar. Nice yıllar hicran oduna yandın, seyredip alemi Adem erdin. Sonunda melamet hırkasın giydin, divanın daim kaim sadıklar. Medet pirim sultanül Harakani, bahşet bize hayatı cavidanı. Cemalin nuruna olduk hayran, divanın da duran ol mestaneler. Zülfün teline bin can olsun feda, sırrına olmuştur hatiften nida. Selimi etmesin zatından cüda, terk
Profesör Emre Ömürlü.
We would like to thank to Professor Emre Ömürlü, who is the son of Yusuf Ömürlü, also is the brother of Dilek Hoca, who just gave a presentation. That means it's very important to improve ourselves on a spiritual and material sense. I would like to thank you again. Our Hoja will say one last word. With your high permission, inspired by the last sentence of Süleyman Hoca, I'd like to share something. When you have a corporate piece of work about Futuwwa in Europe, I think they will be very impressed with this, he said. 2 years ago, with a spiritual sign from Harakani in Belgium, in Brussels, we have found a foundation, the International Harakani Foundation. And it had been quite amateurish until now, but I would like to ask for your help and prayers, and with the chairman of NEF's help, if we can have a workshop of Futuwwa in Europe, we can start an open platform. If we have an institutional structure, if everyone can come there, and let's ask them, what do you think about for people? What have you done? What will you do for humanity? Working on this, and we would ask for your scientific, spiritual, material help for this. Let God Almighty raise your level and reputation and honor. Now I would like to invite our scholar.
I would like to share with your permission that it's such an honor to be here. Just 10 days back when I was coming here, we had just completed a renovation of a sabil outside our center. And they've been asking me, what should we name it? And we have been contemplating, but over these 2 days, I would like to share an announcement with your permission that it just came to our heart that inshallah we will name it as the Chishti Sabil of Unconditional Love, dedicated to the abundance of spiritual benevolence of Hazret EBU'L-HASAN Harakani from the 10th century to the wisdom of Hazret Kenan Rifai in the 20th century. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Your gift, no?
Sen derken sen.
Hocamızınki, Cemâlnur hocam. Anons edin.
Yavuz hocam sen söyle. Tabii. Hocam isterseniz öyle mi? Harakani Vakfı Başkanımız Yavuz hocamız Sayın Cemâlnur hocamıza bir
Hazret'in plaketini bu fakir verecekmiş. Bu getirsin. Sahibül Fütüvvet huzurlarınızda efendim. Sultan. Harakani'den sıfat, Çişli'den destar. Buyurun. Bitti.
Kabul inşallah, kabul.
Bize de nikap.
Evet, hocama da nikap.
Evet, bu dün ve bugün duygu yüklü ama dini bilgilerle süslenmiş, ilmi ve fikri hususlar ihmal edilmemiş, güzel günler geçirdik, güzel saatler geçirdik. Hadis-i şerifte diyor ki, salih müminler, dindar müminler bir araya gelir, sohbet ederlerse Allah'ın rahmeti o zaman üzerlerine gökten nazil olur. Umuyorum ve inanıyorum ki bu 2 gündür Allah'ın rahmeti üzerimizdedir. Umuyorum ve inanıyorum ki bu rahmet sayenizde gelecek nesillere de intikal ederek kapsamını genişletecek, insanlığa, İslamiyet'e faydalı olacak diye düşünüyorum. Hepinize hayırlı gelecekler, iyi akşamlar diliyorum.
Efendim özür diliyorum. Bir görev daha yapmam lazım, özür dilerim. 4 aydan beridir gece ve gündüz olarak Elif hocamızın, müdürümüzün başkanlığında ve hocamın himmetiyle gece gündüz bir çalışma oldu. Bir perdenin arkasında Hazret diyor ya, seni ve beni gören birisi var. Eğer geçersen o perdenin arkasında ne sen kalırsın ne de ben. Perdenin arkasında bu 2 günü hazırlayan bir ekip var. O ekibe huzurlarınızda şükranlarımı arz ediyorum. Evet. Bütün bu ikramlar, bu güzellikler hepsi onların efendim. Hepsi. Teşekkür ederim. Allah razı olsun.
Efendim bu ekip 1 senedir bu filmleri, bugünü ve bu misafirlerimizi onları memnun edecek şekilde ağırlamaya hazırlandı. Bir sempozyum deyip geçmeyin. Çok büyük emek istiyor. Her sene biz 1-2 sempozyumla bu büyük emeği yaşıyoruz. Allah hepsinden razı olsun. Onları buraya davet ediyoruz beraber resim çektirmek için.
Şöyle duralım hep beraber çıkalım. Evet, evet, evet. Ekip de gelsin buraya. Ekip de gelsin.